Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome all of you back to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, Mark Snyder, and we are broadcasting live from the beautiful Dillon State Park here in East Central Ohio. I'd like to remind all of you to please press the follow button, and you'll be notified 1 hour prior to the start of each show. The music you hear at the beginning and end of each show is performed by your host, and CDs are available on request. We've got several interesting guests this evening. We are going to have a show about super soldiers, and Lorien Fenton is our, I don't know what we would call Lorien tonight. She's kind of the organizer of this whole event, and we've got Alara Blackwell and Max Spiers, and I think we're waiting for James Rink, and I'm not sure if he's in yet, but let me tell you, super soldiers are usually heavily augmented, either through eugenics, especially selective breeding, genetic engineering, cybernetic implants, drugs, brainwashing, traumatic events, and extreme training regimen, usually with high casualty rates and often starting from birth or a young age, or other scientific and pseudoscientific means. Occasionally, some instances also use paranormal methods such as black magic and or technology and the science of extraterrestrial origin. The creators of such programs are often viewed as mad scientists or stern military men, depending on their emphasis, as their programs will typically go past ethical boundaries in the pursuit of science and or military might. As I said earlier, tonight we'll be speaking with Lorien Fenton and her super soldiers, and I'd like to welcome Lorien to the show this evening. Lorien, how are you?
Hey, Mark, thank you so much for having us on tonight. I really appreciate it. And I'm doing well. I'm getting over a little bronchitis, but I'm hanging in there. So if I lose my voice halfway through the show tonight, you guys will just have to carry on without me. So well, there we are.
Sure we'll be able to do that. I got a feeling you're going to be fine. Could you please introduce our super soldiers and give us a brief overview of your experiences in this area?
Well, that'd be wonderful. And who's online with us right now? Is Alara and Max with us?
It looks like we have all three, and I haven't brought any of them on the air yet. But I
guess, I'm sorry to step over you there, but I guess what I'll do is I'll just start with my story about how I met Max and James, and we'll go from there, if that's okay with you. But first, I'd like to tell our listeners where they can go to get tickets to the Super Soldier Summit. That's supersoldiersummit.com. We're holding the event next Saturday, June 23rd in Marin County. That's in San Rafael, California, right above San Francisco. And the website has a lot of information. If you're interested in flying into San Francisco, renting a car, and driving up to Marin, that's your best bet to do so. It's going to be a wonderful day. We're going to start at 10 a.m. and finish around 9:30 p.m. in the evening. And I have a couple special guests, hopefully, if they can get their way here. And I have 6 super soldiers, and 3 of them are on the line with us tonight. And they're going to tell their stories. But first I'll tell my little story about how I met them. I was at Awake and Aware in September of 2011 in Los Angeles, and I needed to speak with Bill Ryan during one of the breaks at the conference. And I walked up to him, and there was this handsome young gentleman that was kneeling down in front of him, and they were he was sitting and he was in front of him, and they were holding on to this fabulous little cube. And I was fascinated by this little cube. I was wondering what they were doing, so I didn't leave. Usually I would leave when people are busy, but I butted my way in and got over there and watched what they were doing and listened to their meditation. And when they got done, the young man stood up and they said their goodbyes, and he came and he was walking by, and I said, "What's that cube you've got?" He goes, "That's my Neo cube, and I make them, and by the way, I'm a super soldier." And I went, "Oh, well, that's very interesting." And then I'll go back to what happened on Friday. This was Sunday afternoon, and I'll take you guys back to what happened on Friday and Saturday night. Friday night, I'm sitting in the audience, and Miranda, Duncan O'Finian's girlfriend, was making a presentation for the first time she'd ever spoken about super soldiers and her involvement in it at this conference. And she was talking about how she She had a voice, what they call alters, in her head that screamed all the time. And I about fell off my chair. I was completely blown away. It was the first time I'd ever heard anybody else admit this in my life. And I'm 54 now, so I was 54 when this all happened. And when I was 52, it was the first time in my life I woke up one morning and there was no screaming in my head. And there's that silent space before you wake up and you dream and whatever. And I always had, in the way back far reaches of my mind, somebody screaming at the top of their lungs. I thought for years it was because of being abducted or something that happened to me as a child or, something horrific, but I could never quite figure out what it was. I've never been able to meditate because when I do, I hear that voice screaming. So it was the first time I'd even heard that anybody else had this, and I've never voiced it to anybody. I just thought it was normal that people had this going on. So anyhow, I made a vow at that point that I really didn't want to know what it was because I had a feeling I was in trouble at that point on. So then Saturday night rolls around, and the person that I went to the conference with says the evening was wrapping up, and she goes, I really want to go talk to Duncan and Miranda. And I said, nope, we don't want to talk to them. Let's go. And I'm practically dragging her out of the place, and she's looking for him. She wants to talk to him. And I'm like, nope, we're leaving. And we go around the corner in the very back of the building towards the car in the back parking lot, and who's standing there? Miranda and Duncan having a cigarette. So we just practically ran into them. So she starts talking to Duncan, and I, of course, start talking to Miranda, and I asked her about that screaming voice in her head. And she said, oh, and I said, I've got it too. And she goes, you may not want to know about that. And I said, oh, dear, maybe you're right. Maybe I don't. And so that was very interesting. But during that conversation with Miranda and Duncan, I asked them, I said, I produce conferences. I'm wondering if you guys would be interested in doing something for the super soldiers, because I find what you guys do and what your stories are just fascinating. I think people need to know about you. And they thought it was a good idea to keep in touch with them, going forward. Now it's Sunday. I've met James. He's got his NeoCube, and I said, meet me at my table, because I had a table there. I was representing other authors and speakers, and we're going to pack up and go. And I said, just meet me at the table in about 15 minutes. He shows up. I'm packing my things, and I'm sorry, folks, if I sound out of breath or very soft-spoken. It's just I'm about ready to lose my voice, so I'm trying to conserve just a little bit here to get through the story. So anyhow, I'm packing up my bag, and I'm looking down, and I look up, and a gentleman is standing there, and I had a profound physical experience where I knew this man. It was like 100 times stronger than deja vu. It was absolutely stunning, in my opinion. I've only had it one other time in my life, and I was just blown away by meeting this guy. And I looked up and I said, I know you. And it was first words out of my mouth. And he looks at me and he goes, I think I know you too. And it was a very odd moment, very uncomfortable for everyone involved. And we started all talking, and next thing I know, we all go out to dinner together. And in that moment, it was when we decided to do the Super Soldier Conference. They told me their stories, and I was very compelled to find out more. And since having that meeting, we figured out that I'm probably involved in the Super Soldier program on the fringes of it in some way. And we're just not sure how yet, because I haven't had time to even dig into it, and I'm not going to until after the Super Soldier Summit. So there you go. That's my story. And I think we should probably turn it over to James at this point, because James Rink was the instigator with his NeoCube on how this all started, and Max as well. But let's start with James, if he can pipe in here.
Hey,
go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, great. Well, the only thing else I could add to all that is maybe a month before the actual Awake and Aware conference, Max contacted me, and he was just expressing his frustration on how we're constantly being traumatized. He's blacking out all the time and waking up, and obviously, Max can comment on that. And on my end, I'm getting needle marks every day, and I'm talking about my experiences on YouTube, and I'm constantly being harassed about it. People don't want to believe. They like to take jabs at us, and that's fine. I mean, the vast majority of people are not aware, and unfortunately, they're going to have to wake up probably the hard way. But we wanted to somehow bring our experiences out into the public forum in a way that the powers that be, the cabal, those who are traumatizing us, will not be able to stop. And we did a meditation with the Neo, and next thing I know, the money shows up for me to, because I didn't even really want to go out to L.A. for the Awake and Aware. It was expensive, and plus, I just didn't want to spend the time doing it. But the money manifested, and at that point, and plus my friends were all saying, you need to come out here. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go out. And I picked Max up, and we both went out to the summit, and we met Lorien. And next thing we know, the first ever Super Soldier Summit is going to happen in San Francisco, well, just north of San Francisco, next week. Actually, on the 23rd of June. So a lot of synchronicities brought us all together, and I feel like this was meant to be. You could say maybe the gods approved it.
All right, James, what I'm going to do now is I have a clip I want to play. Super soldiers are ultimate warriors, and they excel beyond normal human performance, and they play a dangerous game of life and death. And sometimes these super soldiers are called ultimate human machines.
They are the ultimate warriors, the elite forces of special operations, super soldiers who excel beyond normal human performance, like Olympic athletes in a dangerous game of life and death. Now, Fight Science reveals the secrets of special operations superhuman performance.
Ready? Go. On your knees, now! These guys are the ultimate human machines. I'm blown away by what I've seen here.
How will their combat-tested skills measure up on the front lines of science?
Okay, right now his core temperature is 102 degrees.
His mind is screaming at him, stop now.
And what does it take to become the elite warriors of special operations? For centuries, militaries around the world have used specialized units to execute dangerous covert missions behind enemy lines. They require an elite level of soldier with the ultimate training, superior physiology, and extraordinary mental ability to perform under stress. This is fighting at its most sophisticated. It's about athletic excellence, extreme conditioning, and superior genetics. It's about the razor-sharp limits of human performance. Now, an elite corps of the world's best-trained warriors gathers in the name of science to push their bodies to their physical limits. The strength and stamina of Navy SEALs, the speed and focus of Green Berets, the lightning reflexes of Israeli commandos.
These guys perform at superhuman levels.
And the first question this evening I'll pose to Alara, hopefully I've pronounced that right. And the question I have is about the mental stress that some of these super soldiers have to endure. And I wondered if you could tell us, Alara, what kind of mental stress that you've experienced. Hopefully I've got the right person on the line here.
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. For me, I'm not considered a super soldier. I'm a remote viewer. I'm an information asset. So for me, things were a little bit different, I guess. I was constantly taken from wherever I was, be it when I was on base or before I even joined the military. and put under hypnosis and drug-induced hypnosis, and then used to go remote view locations and get information about where, I guess, these super soldiers would have been going. So I was an information gatherer instead of actually being like on the front lines and doing what people would consider super soldier activities.
Alara, are you 480?
Uh-huh.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure so I knew who was who. Now, can you tell us about this drug-induced hypnosis that you would go under?
From what I can remember, and like I said, these are vague memories because we are forced to not remember after a while. I would be taken to a room. I would be hooked up to an IV, and they would start injecting, I guess, drugs into the IV. They never told me what it was. And then I would be led through like a hypnotic trance, and was then given certain code phrases, and then I would leave my body, and I could still hear the person, which I would consider a handler, sitting next to me taking notes or recording it. And they would go tell me to go look at certain target numbers, and I would go do that and then report back anything I saw or heard, and they would write everything down and then pass that information off to whoever needed it. Then they would tell me to forget, and I would be on my way. I'd be back to wherever they took me from, not knowing anything had happened.
When did you start experiencing these remote viewing sessions?
I was practicing on my own, I guess, when I was in high school. And I would actually just start remote viewing my friends. I didn't realize it was connected to anything else. I just thought it was something that I could do. And I was very accurate. But I realize now that I was just using my abilities kind of in a free-form basis. And I don't know why I was doing it, or maybe just it was a bleed over. But I've been able to go out of my body since I was a little kid. So I could actually walk around and go visit places since I was very little.
When did you start doing this in the military? I know these are memories that you're just getting back, but when did the military aspect of this begin?
I've always grown up near a military base, so I was working for the government since I was little. They were telling me to go spy on certain people, and I would just be like, okay, it's like a game. I just go do it and then come back. I didn't join the military until I was 17. Actually, no, I turned 18. My mom wouldn't let me in early. And they were trying to test at that point to see if the training in the military would affect my already split personalities and see how that would work out. And actually it was working out just fine until they gave me an MRI. And at that point I started realizing that I'd been losing time, and that started to really worry me, and I couldn't figure out where I was because my personality started going back and forth, and they finally decided that I was not able to stay in the military and do this type of work at the same time. So working for the government for a while, actually. Probably my first memory of actually looking at a target would be, sorry about that, it's my dogs.
All right, I have dogs too. So at what age? You said you were very young and you were spying on people. So
yeah.
The government was giving you a paycheck? While you were doing...
I never got paid for this. I was just taken from my home and told to do this. Actually taken from my daycare when I lived near Stanford University, and that was it. I never got paid for it. Never was official. The only reason, like, they're kind of paying me now, I guess, because I get disability from the military. But yeah, it was never on an official basis. It was always as I just go do it, and then they'd set me back home, and I was none the wiser.
Wow. So at this very young age, you were spying on people for the military.
Yeah.
But they would take you right out of daycare. So they must have known that you would have this ability.
I have a lot of very suspicious upbringing. Like, I started kind of looking into it once I started getting memories back. I was born at Stanford University Hospital, and and that was suspicious because they didn't flight life my mom to the nearest hospital that could take care of her premature baby. They took her there, which was farther than some of the closer hospitals that they could have taken her to, where she said she was drugged for about a week, and my family didn't really see me or my mother for that time. And then once the doctors realized I could go home, I was fine. Then they just sent me home, and that was that. And there's nobody can tell me what happened during the time I was in the hospital at all.
So, did your parents know about your remote viewing abilities?
Yeah, my mom did, because she was used to me as a little kid just saying, "Hey, Mom, there's people in military uniforms like walking through the walls and stuff," and she'd be like, "Okay, whatever." Or I'd tell her I'd see like ghosts or things showing up, and she just kind of was okay with that. She's like, "Oh, you're just a psychic kid. That's fine." But she kind of never really was around, and my father was taken out of the picture very early. And then he actually got in a car accident and had a stroke, so I didn't really have contact with him for very much time, actually, not until I was about 25 or 26. So it's kind of like, it almost felt like they were never really around all the time, and I was constantly just going away, I guess.
You know, it's interesting that you said that you could see people walking through walls. Ingo Swann has a book about his remote viewing that he did of the moon, and it was interesting that the people that he saw on the moon could also see him when he was remote viewing them. It's as if some aspect of him was actually on the moon at the time that he was remote viewing. Is that how it kind of works?
That's kind of how I thought, because like I said, my first out-of-body experience where I was lucid and knew it, I was about 3 years old, and it was after I had a head injury, and they were stitching my head up. I was floating in the corner of the room watching the doctors stitch up my head. And for me, it's always been, remote viewing has always been synonymous with out-of-body. I didn't realize that people could just remote view and write down information. For me, I was always going to the place, looking around, and telling them as much information as I could. And I kind of didn't really even believe it when I got my memories back, but when working with my friends on Skype and stuff, I'd start practicing. We were going to start practicing to see, who's so-and-so holding, like what are you holding in your hand, and we try to guess, or what color am I thinking of. And then at one point, I just jumped over to where they were, and I was like, I can't tell what's in your hand, but is this what your room looks like? And I started describing it, and they're like, holy crap, you're standing in my room. Like, you're down to a T. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's how this works then. I'm like, I just stood around, like, looking at him and looking at everything around me. So I realized that's how I was doing it.
Can you get out of your body at will?
I can, in a sense that I can stand somewhere else and look around, and I'm pretty accurate, I guess, but half the time I don't really trust myself, and I'm still aware of my body. It's not like a full, like, out-of-body where I'm not aware of my physical body. That happens only when I'm, like, half asleep. And then I'll walk around. I've done that a number of times where I've fallen asleep and then stepped out of my body and just started kind of walking around.
You can't do it like at will. You couldn't lay down right now, relax, and then be out of your body.
Not like that, no. I consider it like a split consciousness where I'm in two places at once.
Wow.
I can forget my body enough that I can focus on the other side and look around and get information, but it's delayed. It's not an instantaneous. For me, like I have to kind of come back to my body and then I remember where I was. I don't know how to get to the point where I just step out of my body and can be somewhere, and that may have to do with my alters, different personalities, and my abilities that are locked away in certain places of my mind that I can see, because I can see my own like mental construct, and I can see this giant cube in my mind that I can't get into. So there's something there, but I haven't quite been able to figure out what that is.
Very interesting. Laura, I'm going to put you on mute. I've got another clip I want to play, and then I'll bring on the next super soldier. Very interesting. Thank you. You're 480, correct?
Correct.
All right. Here we go. Second clip of this evening. There's a super soldier, and I think his name, he's a British guy. His name is David Morrow, I think. And he talks about some of the torture that he endured as a child. I think it's part of the conditioning program that they go through.
They tried to sacrifice me at some point around the age of between 4 and 6. Some men came round, a ritual sacrifice. I was made to stare at the sun whilst they tried to put me on a crucifix and sacrifice me, some kind of ritual sacrifice.
In what way did they try and fail?
I don't know how they failed. I don't know if it was raided or I was also... there was sexual abuse going on as well. I don't know. I don't quite understand how I'm still here. I do think I died at one point and something happened because I'm still here. Sounds a bit strange, I know, but I went there was, all I can remember is being pulled up to the cross, and somehow someone intervened or something. And don't know, I'm not sure.
Where was this?
This was on the Orkney Islands.
Can you name the school or the home? Or you
There's a place called Horries, and there's a place called the Scarab Brae, which is an ancient, lots of archaeology. It's quite blurry, because I was drugged and stuff as well.
You mentioned that this was a scandal in the early 90s. Was the police involved? Were the raids involved?
CID, Child Protection Social Services, raided the island looking for a satanic paedophile network. Labour Party threw it out as a witch hunt, as a myth, even though, due to lack of evidence, even though there were countless testimonies.
Can you mention any of those, the details?
Well, I was made to drink goat's blood.
In what sort of circumstances?
Well, on one particular occasion, my father took a cup and a knife out into the garden, and
this is your adopted father?
My adopted father, he took a knife and a cup out into the garden and called me out with a smile on his face, quite a weird smile on his face. Wasn't too impressed by it, and he said, "Come here, Dave," and there's two guys holding this goat. It's the first time it happened a couple of times, about 3 or 4 times, and basically he slit the goat's throat in front of me. I can't be more than 7 years old at this point, and blood starts pouring out. He fills the cup with blood. I'm forced to drink it, and I black out, pass out, traumatized. Happened a few times.
Okay, my next question then is for Super Soldier Max. Max, are you 818?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. Have you endured any kind of abuse as a child?
Yeah. I know David as well. I know him, and some of my experiences are very similar to his. I'm from England as well, and there are a lot of parallels between my story and his. I didn't realize it at the time when I was a kid. I didn't know it. I think because when you go through trauma like that, your mind separates and compartmentalizes the trauma, so you're unaware of it, so that you don't keep reliving it over and over again. But as I've got older, there has been some very intense memories come back to me, connected with the first school that I went to, and so yes, absolutely.
So you've experienced, what you experienced, was it like David, where he had to drink goat's blood? Did you have to endure anything like that, or were you...
I was involved in occult rituals. I don't remember specifically that happening, but I do remember in 2008, a whole stream of memories came back to me, and they would come back at random points in the day, and I'd have to lay down, and they would just come streaming back. And at that time, I had a lot of occult memories that came back to me, connected with the first town that I lived in from the ages of about 0 to 9 years old, and they are connected with the occult rituals like that. Pretty graphic stuff. Pretty graphic things went on, and they do that to split the mind, so that they can create the altars. So in conjunction with it being an occult ritual, they are also creating many different personalities to be used and triggered later on in life, or whenever they want. And there's a sexual aspect to it as well, because the sexual energy and psychic energy being one and the same thing, they are manipulating that. So I was activated at a very young age with this stuff.
Do you think your parents were involved with rituals?
I think that there is, because these programs are multi-generational and they work through the generations. So if I'm involved, my parents are involved somehow, their parents are involved, etc. So I know they were to some extent, maybe not as much as I was, but they definitely were involved. But they were also programmed too. So there's a lot of amnesia connected to it. So they may not even be aware of what they were doing. But So yes, they were involved. I don't think that they know about it as much. So I think my mother has some awareness of it.
Now, you said that sexual energies and psychic energies are the same. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, it's that's why sex is always used in black magic rituals and occult rituals, because they just know that it's psychic energy too. So depending on the ritual, and it's connected with a lot of Egyptian rituals which are carried through, which a lot of them come from the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And they were doing this type of thing 5,000-10,000 years ago. It just wasn't as technologically advanced as it is now. But they were doing this throughout, in Babylon, in Egypt, in Sumeria, the Romans, the Greeks. They were all doing this too. It's just people think that it's only come out in the last century to do with the Nazis, but it's been going on for thousands of years. So the Kundalini energy, which is sexual energy, which is the serpent, which coils up, which is coiled at the base of the spine, can then be activated through certain sexual rituals. And then when that is activated through sexual activity, then the psychic energy is also activated. So then they can manipulate the psychic energy of specific bloodline children. So if you come from a certain bloodline, then there's certain bloodlines that have more psychic activity connected with them. And they already know about that. So they knew I was coming before I was even here. I think that there was trauma done to me whilst I was in the womb of my mother as well. So they have all the information. They know what they're doing. They've been doing it for thousands of years.
Now, you mentioned psychic energy, and that makes me wonder, is there a positive aspect to any of this?
I guess the outcome, yeah, because psychic energy is neither positive or negative. It's how it's used. They're the same as information. So the positive outcome of it is I'm hyper aware of my surroundings. If usually when there's any form of attack being done on me in terms of psychic attack, I'm aware moments before it happens. I'm aware that it's going to happen. So the positive side of it is that I have a great defense to a lot of things that I otherwise wouldn't have, hadn't this happened to me.
You mentioned that your parents were programmed. When did you first find out that your parents were programmed? I
would think maybe 5 years ago. It's a touchy subject because there's elements of this inside of me that I feel like I'm betraying them by even speaking about it. And there's also when I speak about this, I see an image in my head of somebody doing the shush sign over their mouth. So like a upright finger across the mouth saying shh to me like that. So there's a layered programming which tells me to be quiet about this stuff. I've had visceral reactions where my lips and my mouth have kind of shut down when I've tried to speak about this before. So in terms of my parents, I don't really want to go too much into that because, as I said, that's not something that I want to do. But I've been aware for about 5 years, that there's an involvement in terms of them.
So were you programmed by the British government? Who were your programmers?
That's a good question. Who were they? It has to be. There's connections to the upper levels of British government. The Tavistock Institute, which was created in the early '60s, which is a mind control connection to television, music, and they had a hand in it. There's not just one agency. I think there's a connection to the U.S. government too. I was living in California when I was 6 to 7 years old, and I think there's a connection there. There's a crossover point because it was known that I was going to live in California when I was 20. So there's a connection. I mean, they're one and the same thing, really. I also have a connection to Joseph Mengele, who was a programmer, a Nazi programmer. He was known as Dr. Green as well, and he has deep connections to this. He supposedly died in the late 70s, I think. But I think, in truth, he still continued this programming through to the mid-'80s as well. There's connection to the Bush family through Mengele, too, which I have connections to as well.
Well, explain to us your connection to Mengele and the Bushes.
My two middle names, the middle name of my grandfather and my middle name is Herbert and Walker.
Really?
And yes.
How bizarre.
That's unfortunate, isn't it? Yeah. And I've had a number of synchronicities with Dr. Green, who was the nickname of Joseph Mengele. And I have a couple of memories, some very bizarre memories associated with him. I remember seeing him. I've seen him change what he looks like as well. His face change. Yeah. Go angular, his ears pointed, pale skin. Connected with a ritual that I was involved in. I was about 8 years old, sitting around a long table, and a lot of the times from the memories that I have and connected with these rituals, that I'm in a hypnotic state. So I'm only like maybe 20% aware of what's going on. And they brought in a plate of food, which had a food with a lid on top of it, so I didn't know what was underneath it at the time. And when it was lifted, there was body parts.
Goodness.
And then uniform standing at the foot of the table, and I was sitting next to two other people who were also connected with the same project. And one's my age, one is a little younger, and they wanted us to eat. I think when I saw that happen, there was just fear. I think I blacked out, but there was so much fear associated with it. They seemed to be feeding off the fear of me seeing what I was seeing. They feed off the energy of fear. So without getting too graphic with that, that's what went on. And there's been a few of them like that, where I've been aware that they put me in situations where it's high fear, high stress. I'll black out or disassociate, and then they'll feed from that energy.
So what did you do for the military? Do you have any idea?
Yeah. These were the early experiences. Yeah. I was connected to doing, soldier, directly connected with soldier work, assassination work, soldier work, demolition work, reconnaissance work. This all came back to me like in March of 2008. There's a lot to say about that.
Huh. That's amazing. Last question. You talked about the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Can you elaborate on that at all?
Yeah. That's basically a script that is written down, which, and you can get hold of this book. There's the Egyptian Book of Living and Dying, and there's the Egyptian. They're very different books. In the Egyptian Book of the Dead, it breaks down, basically, how to make a mind-controlled slave in the first half of the book. And it explains through drugs and through trauma and ritual, you can disassociate the mind and create soldiers or sex slaves or spies or any number of things like that. Once you put them through trauma, you have different personalities there. So you can program them that way to do anything you want. And there are specific programs like the Monarch program, which is the majority is for females, which is a sex slave program, and you have a lot of people in Hollywood and the music industry who are connected to that.
Wow. Gosh, this stuff is overwhelming. I'm going to play our next clip, and thank you very much, Max. Very interesting stuff. I'm going to play our next clip, and this is Duncan O'Finian, who was a top government assassin and a super soldier. And let's listen to a little bit of his story.
Jesse Ventura is about to confront a programmed killer. Robert Duncan O'Finian says he's living proof that the government's top secret sleeper assassin program is back in action. Jesse Ventura, decorated war veteran and Navy SEAL, demanded to judge this so-called super soldier man to man. The meet takes place in a downtown parking garage. This is bizarre, to say the least.
It goes beyond bizarre and gets more bizarre as you dig down the rabbit hole.
We've all read about quote-unquote Manchurian candidates, and what you're here to tell me is it's absolutely real.
It is absolutely real. However, we were beyond Manchurian candidate. Manchurian candidate, as a rule, was designed to do one job only. We did multitudes.
Now, when you say we, who's we? Now, are we speaking here of MK Ultra?
MK Ultra is more of a catch-all phrase for anything to do with what we're talking about.
The governor finds out more about O'Finian's supposed microchip implants. Correct me and educate me as we go along here. You were involved in a car accident.
Correct.
And because of it, you got an MRI.
Right. What happened is the MRI caused the cranial implant to malfunction. And when it malfunctioned, it broke down specific barriers that were put in place to keep memory separated, compartmentalized, as it were. And it was at that moment I knew that all the nightmares, the daydreams, weren't just dreams. They were actual memories of the different personalities meshing together. After that day, I basically had a choice. Either go totally insane or find out what happened.
How many implants did it turn out that you had in you?
I know of 3.
Wow, what an incredible story. Let's bring James on the line. James, are you 704?
Hi there. Yeah.
Do you have any microchip implants, or have you had any memories blocked or anything along those lines?
Yeah. Yes to both. As far as implants are concerned, I've got a rod-shaped object in my earlobe. I've got these little splinter-like objects coming out underneath my toenail, and that's partly because I've been doing some heavy metal detox for the past 9 months or so. I know I've actually seen some like rod-shaped objects. What they actually have done, they drill holes between my, I guess it would be like into my gums, and you can see little tiny holes, and there's like this black-shaped rod. Sometimes you see little rods. Sometimes you just see like it looks like a hole. I mean, that they drilled into, but it's like since like a scar. You can see a scar, but they hurt. And there have actually been other times where it almost feels like they've taken a needle and jammed it up your nose, your nasal cavity, into your brain. And there have been times where I have had severe pain at the top of my nose that goes up into my forehead. And I know that's actually one way they put implants in you. And I've got numerous needle marks and all that. As far as the other question about blacking out, I have no memories between the ages of 6 and 8. I've been told by various people that say, well, some say that's common, some say it's not. I don't know. As far as blacking out, I mean, I know something really is weird going on. I believe it's interdimensional because when I get these needle marks, it's not just when I wake up in the morning. I could be talking to you right now, and next thing I know, my lips start hurting, and then I look in the mirror, and there's a little tiny, like a 3-pronged needle mark, and I believe it's actually interdimensional. It is my belief, at least those who have been around me who have clairvoyant vision, have seen what you could call brown grays, the robotic grays. The Dracos has given them to the covert government to carry out Milabs abductions, and one of the things they do is inject people, take DNA samples, and give people drugs, and terminate people, and they make it look natural. So that's a long answer to your short question there.
You said you had no memories between the years of 6 and 8. Have you ever talked to your parents about that?
No, my folks are not very open-minded. As soon as I start talking about strange things, they start laughing and think it's kind of funny and say, "Oh, it's just in your imagination." So I believe that's part of their programming. They just don't want to let me go into certain areas. Now, it's a good thing you actually mentioned that. Something just came to my mind. When I have confronted my father one time about any unusual things that happened to me as a child, he told me something interesting that I don't remember. He said that when I was 7, I think, he came home one day and saw me moving up and down, and he did an exorcism on me. Of course, I come from a Christian background. What I probably needed was a therapist because I probably had dissociative identity disorder, not demon possession. But maybe I had both. I don't know. I have no recall of any of that. So, I'll just let you put whatever you want to into what you think going on there.
So, do you think that you've been involved with the government somehow and that you've been doing work for the government that you're not aware of?
Yeah, that would be what you would call a double life. And as far as how it's actually done, it's a very good question. First of all, when we say government, at least what I'm referring to is basically Project Paperclip Nazis that are brought over in this country that infiltrated the constitutional republic. Well, that's another story, but what you know is your constitutional government, and they set up a secret underground network, and they channeled secret funds, and they built underground bases, and all this stuff is basically the Nazi network. Okay, so this is the covert government that's doing this, and they have made deals with the extraterrestrials. It's run by U.S. Space Command, and the Air Force is also connected into it. Hello?
Yes, I'm fascinated.
That's really weird. No, my phone sounds like... Okay, well, nothing unusual. All right, it's just strange. My phone, it sounded like something was tapping into it, but...
Do you hear a beeping sound on your phone?
No, it's almost like it died or something. I don't know, it's just like the connection went dead. But I know I wanted to make a point. You were asking me, do you think I work for the government and how it's done? The way at least what I believe is going on for me, of course, I'm a different flavor of super soldier as Duncan and some of the older generation, and probably Max. I mean, I don't know. Oh, actually, I think Max has been involved in the same kind of thing, actually. But what I believe is going on is through our altars, what we actually do is we, instead of blacking out and going to an altar and having superhuman strength in our physical body, we are actually, our consciousness is connected into clone avatars, and this goes and tied into what's going on in Dulce Base. The covert government, the Dracos, reptilians, and they clone avatars of us. And it's not our soul that is projecting into these entities. It is our consciousness, just our thoughts and our emotions. Well, they try not to put that into them, but and our gifts and our abilities. And that is tied into the AI, where they download certain memories they want us to have, and we are sent on different missions via, because we're talking about Montauk 2.0 or Montauk 4, all the way up to 4.0. So, and in this physical dimension, they want to, at least for me particularly, they want to keep us weak and sick, so that, and disempowered, so that we cannot integrate. But of course, they can't. What they don't want us to realize is that if we can find love in our lives, people that are willing to love us and if we can find love ourselves, then we can integrate and we can step out of this programming. And that's what I'm working on through meditation and prayer. But it's a slow process. As far as whether some of these gifts and abilities have bleed through, what would integration be like, I believe if I stopped getting needle marks and injections, I probably would integrate with my altar, and I would gain the same abilities that are in my clone avatars, but they're making hell bent for that not to happen. That's why I get daily injections, at least.
Well, James, thank you very much. I'm going to move on to our next clip, and this clip is about a man named James Casbolt who experienced a kind of training as a child that involved trauma and mind control.
We were actually kept in the building above ground in the mountain, and this was it was basically an aircraft hangar, and they used to keep the doors open, and it was just a series of cots, and it was a trauma center, so they wanted to keep us cold, so they keep the doors open. We were under armed guard 24 hours a day, so because there were groups of, I've been told, who wanted to rescue us. So we were under armed guard 24 hours a day, so we couldn't be rescued.
So the trauma is there to fracture the mind and create alters, is that?
Yeah, they did a lot of programming with wild animals there, because they used a particular room which they had this, it was like a pen set up, and it was very similar to a Skinner box, which is used in psychiatry, right? Where they, in experiments with the Skinner boxes, they put babies in with animals and things like that, cognitive behavior tests.
Right.
So what they were doing, they'd put us in this pen with various wild animals, and what they were doing was they were giving us the attributes of various animals, because when we were older, we were used in a lot of all-terrain warfare,
right?
Jungle warfare, Arctic warfare, right? In different countries around the world. So
now,
you needed to have animal senses.
All right. Now, some people will find that hard to believe, James. What do you say to people? I mean, I guess it's difficult for you to come out with any tangible proof of what you're saying. I mean, at what point did you come to the UK then? After you
81.
And how old were you in 81?
About 5 or 6.
Right. So did you go from this Canadian base? Tell me when you left.
Well, what happened, I grew up for the first 4 years, from 76 to 79, in this base.
Right.
Every day we were being trained and conditioned.
Did you ever...
Lauren, I wanted to ask you, have you experienced any of this trauma-based mind control?
You know, Mark, that's a good question. I don't think so. I have been going under hypnosis a little bit since last September to find out if any of this has been going on with me. And I'm finding out that they didn't bother me as a child. They didn't attach themselves to me or start using me until I was 13, because I was used in some types of rituals that I don't really want to go into on the air, but more or less they waited till puberty for me, because that's what they needed me for. But I think I was being watched when I was quite young because of my ability to manifest. And when I say manifest, what I really mean is be able to focus my mind, willingly, unwillingly, to manifest things that I need, want, or can create. And that really comes down to being a magician. That's the word, that's what magic is. And I'll just tell a little story. When I was about 6 or 7, I went to the state fair with my grandparents, and I wanted this black bunny, this 4-H black bunny, so bad. The girl that had it, she let me hold it, and I was petting it, and I wanted it so bad. And I'll never forget it. I'm driving home with them, and I'm in the back seat, and I kept saying, "Will you guys buy me a black bunny? Can I have one?" And I was just bugging them to death, my grandparents. And they were just like, no, you can't have a rabbit, no. And we get to our home, and we lived out in the country. We had a small farm out there, and there's a gate to the driveway as you drive up there. And lo and behold, they open the gate, and there's sitting a black bunny. And so that was just one of many times in my life that I unwillingly created something that I wanted. Now, whether it was through circumstance, because 2 months later, the kids that owned that bunny said, "Oh, it got away that day, and it ended up out, we don't know where it went," but I gave it back to them because I was bored with it by that time. But bottom line is, if you can manifest that type of thing, the government wants you. And Alara can attest to that, because it sounds like they were using her for similar things at a very young age. So, and somehow they knew about me. Both my grandmothers were considered psychic. One was a tarot card reader, and the other one was just pretty psychic. And so, they know about us. I don't know how they know about us, but I think Max and James have a better grip on that at this point, because I'm just new to all this. It just started happening to me. So, anyhow, I've been through a little hypnosis, and I don't think a whole lot of child abuse rituals were done to me, but in my teenage years and early 20s, I think there were some things that were done. But I'm still exploring that, just to let you know.
Is this ability to manifest things, is this something that you've tried in your adult years at all?
I'm sorry, Mark, I was coughing. I couldn't hear what you were saying. What was that?
Well, I was wondering, you said you had this ability, this rabbit manifested itself when you were a child. Was this like, they say that kids sometimes have special perceptions or special abilities.
Exactly.
And then sometimes as adults, we kind of lose touch with those.
Exactly. And that's
that.
Yeah, I've retained it. I can do these things if I want to. I have to be in the right space at the right time, the right things going on in my life. I have to feel good. I can't feel, that's another thing they do to us. They make us physically sick. I've had a lot of illnesses. I've had some strange things happen to me. I've almost died a couple of times because of the illnesses. And those are the type of things that drain your ability to do this quote-unquote magic or whatever it is they need you for on their playing ground. Because they play in magic. I mean, just coming up this week is the Bilderbergs with their sacrifice to their gods and on the 20th and 21st. I mean, if you believe in all that, if you believe in the satanic worship that they do and all that, this is their high holy day coming up here. So they use a lot of children for these things. They use their fear. They use them sexually because the sex brings out the emotions they want that they feed off of on an energetic level. And one of the ways that we've figured out as a group finally is that if we're in love, like James says, and if we're not in fear, fear is their key motivator, it's their key grip on you. It holds them to you. It makes it so that you can never get out of their control. And if you wake up one day and you just say, I'm not afraid of you, the worst you can do to me is kill me, they pretty much leave you alone after that, and especially if you're older, because one of the things that Max and James and Alara can attest to is the fact that when you're about 28 to 32, you either break their conditioning or programming or you end up dead. There's just no other way around it. There's just two things that happen to you. So, and these are the guys that have fought their way through and have come out the other side, and they know what's happened to them, and they're not dead, and they're not afraid, and that's why that they're here and they're able to talk about this now. So, hope that answered your question.
I had a question from the chat room, and it's from Brilliant Essence, and I think she's asking, when did this programming stop, or has it stopped? I mean, have you been through some kind of programming then that you think has it stopped at some point?
I believe that I started being used when I was 13, and I was stopped being used when I was about 30. That's just what the person who was helping me with the hypnotic regression and I figured out. And during that time, I don't have a lot of recall. I have 2 or 3 incidents that happened to me that we were able to touch more upon in the hypnosis, and they weren't programming for me. I'm not a programmed killer. I'm not a programmed soldier. I'm not any of these things that James or Alara would be. And I know that Max has done some of the soldiering, but Max and I were probably used more in the, it's hard to say this and not sound crazy, but satanic cult abuse and programming and, magic rituals to keep their whole New World Order and their whole cabal going that controls, the energetic field on this planet. So,
Lorien, I've got to admit, I've been a little skeptical of the super soldier stuff in the past, but after talking to you guys tonight, wow, I'm kind of impressed. I think we've barely scratched the surface tonight, and I wondered if you guys could come back at some later date and maybe we could go into this in a little more detail. I know it's probably hard to bring all these people together, but what do you think?
Oh, I'm up for it if they are, and we're busy next weekend.
I know, but maybe next month or something like that.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. And all of the super soldiers in their own right are going to be going on radio shows after this event. We've kind of broken open the egg now, so it's getting out there and everybody's hearing about it. And I'm hoping we're not sounding too fantastical, But, the reality is there is something going on. Now, whether we're all, crazy in a group and we found each other, that's one thing that could be going on, but I don't think so. I'm an old woman and I know better. You know how your gut can tell you that this is real? It is real. There's much more to our stories, and people will find out about that at the Super Soldier Summit if they care to attend. And further, down the line, there's probably going to be more books and different articles coming out, and many more radio shows. So, if the audience can make it, try to get to the Super Soldier Summit on June 23rd. That's next Saturday. You can buy tickets at supersoldiersummit.com.
Let me thank these guys. 818. That's Max.
That's me.
Fascinating
That's me.
story. Thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
It's been a lot of fun. And 480, that's Alara. Great. Fantastic stuff. I hope you can come back.
Yeah, me too.
And finally, 704, I think that's James. Thank you very much, guys.
You're very welcome.
Fantastic show to all of you. Very interesting. And let's do this again, and you guys have a good evening, okay?
All right.
Thank you, Mark.
See you later.